The slap echoed through 12 ballroom speakers. Sharp, clean, impossible to pretend nobody heard it. 600 people went silent at once beneath crystal chandeliers while my husband's hand slowly lowered from my face. And then my mother-in-law smiled, actually smiled. Judith Kesler lifted her champagne glass calmly from the stage like this was part of the entertainment. A few people laughed nervously. Someone near the front whispered, "Oh my God." Blood touched the corner of my mouth, warm, metallic. I remember tasting it before I fully understood what had happened. And standing there in that ballroom, surrounded by people wearing tuxedos and diamond bracelets, I had exactly one thought. None of you know who my mother is. 48 hours later, Grant Kesler would be standing in front of a judge. Judith Kesler's charity foundation would be under investigation. And I would be sitting in my mother's kitchen eating stuffed cabbage rolls while my phone exploded with messages from people suddenly pretending they had always supported me. But none of that started at the gala. It started 3 years earlier, the moment I married into the Kesler family. Before I tell you what happened the night my husband slapped me in front of 600 witnesses, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. And if you've ever sat in a room where people smiled while someone humiliated you, this story is for you. My name is Myra Kesler, 33 years old, compliance director, Ohio-born. Daughter of an immigrant woman who taught me something very important long before I ever met the Keslers. No crying without a plan. My mother, Myra Novak, came to America from Romania when she was 23 years old, carrying $400, 2 suitcases, and a dictionary with missing pages. She worked as a court interpreter during the day. At night, she studied law at library tables until security guards locked the building. She passed the bar exam on her second attempt. By 31, she was standing inside Ohio courtrooms helping women escape men who thought power meant ownership. Growing up with Alina was like being raised by calm fire. She never screamed, never panicked, never begged anyone to love her correctly. When bad things happened, she simply said, "Tears are data, then we make a plan." I didn't fully understand what that meant until years later, until the Keslers. I met Grant at a hospital fundraiser in Columbus. Funny enough, another ballroom. He was charming in the dangerous kind of way, not loud, not flashy, just attentive. He remembered details, asked thoughtful questions, looked at me like what I said mattered. That's how men like Grant work. They study kindness before they decide whether to deserve it. We dated 6 months before he proposed. Sunday coffee dates, late-night phone calls. Snow walks through German village. He proposed in October beside a fountain with a ring so expensive I physically hesitated touching it. The first warning sign came immediately after. "Mom wants to approve the ring first," he joked. I laughed. Grant didn't. That should have told me everything. Judith Kesler inserted herself into our relationship like she'd always belonged there. Wedding venue, her decision. Guest list, her decision. Flowers, her decision. At first, I interpreted it as enthusiasm. Then Thanksgiving happened. First Thanksgiving after the engagement. Judith's dining room looked like a magazine spread. Perfect silverware placement. Crystal wine glasses. Candles flickering beside polished serving trays. I brought my mother's sarmale. Romanian stuffed cabbage rolls wrapped carefully in foil inside a glass baking dish. My mother spent 4 hours making them with me the night before. "Food tells people who you are," she'd smiled. I carried them proudly into Judith's dining room, and for one tiny moment I truly thought I belonged there. Judith lifted the foil slowly, studied the food silently, then placed the cover back on. She turned toward the table casually and said 5 words that changed my marriage forever. "She is not one of us." No yelling, no anger, just cold certainty, like announcing the weather forecast. Paige laughed immediately. Grant stared down at his plate. Nobody defended me. Nobody said, "That's inappropriate." Nobody said, "She's your future daughter-in-law." Judith simply smiled toward Paige. "Get the real food from the kitchen, honey." God, I can still hear the silverware clinking afterward. The silence. The humiliation of standing there holding food my mother made with her hands while rich people quietly pretended not to notice cruelty happening directly in front of them. I carried the dish back to the kitchen, placed it on the counter carefully, walked outside, sat in my car, and stared through the windshield for 10 full minutes without moving. November rain tapped softly against the glass. My chest hurt. My hands shook slightly, and deep down, I already knew something dangerous. Women like Judith Kesler don't insult you accidentally. They test how much disrespect you'll tolerate. That night, after Grant fell asleep beside me, I opened my laptop, created a folder on the desktop, and named it Insurance. The Keslers lived in a world where money softened everything: consequences, cruelty, even silence. Judith Kesler called it class. My mother called it insulation. After Thanksgiving, I started noticing things I should have questioned earlier. Small things first. Grant never made decisions without calling Judith. Not important decisions. Everything: which couch we bought, which neighborhood we looked at, which restaurants were appropriate for work dinners. At first, I mistook it for closeness. Then I realized something uncomfortable. Grant wasn't close to Judith. He was managed by her. Harold Kesler, Grant's father, had died 21 years earlier from a heart attack at 54. He left behind a building materials company, multiple investment properties, and a trust fund worth nearly $3 million. Judith became the sole controller of all of it, and apparently she never let go. Grant received $3,000 every month from the trust on top of his salary. So did his younger sister, Paige Kesler. But every major expense still required Judith's approval. Vacation? Ask Judith. Home repairs? Ask Judith. Large purchases? Ask Judith. Judith called it stewardship. My mother called it financial control with better branding. The second year of our marriage started with a house. Grant found a 4-bedroom colonial outside Westlake. White siding, large backyard, perfect landscaping. The kind of house designed for Christmas cards. Price tag: $410,000. We can ask Mom for the down payment, Grant said casually while showing me listing photos. I stared at him. We have savings. Grant frowned immediately. Mom already offered? That sentence told me everything. Not we decided, not we planned. Mom offered, meaning Mom controlled. I suggested we buy something smaller ourselves, something fully ours. Grant looked genuinely offended. Why would we struggle when we don't have to? Because dependence always costs something eventually. But I didn't say that aloud. By the next morning, Judith had already contacted a realtor. Of course she had. She chose the neighborhood, negotiated the mortgage terms, recommended the lender, and finally co-signed the loan herself, meaning Judith Kesler's name sat attached to our house forever. That same week, I quietly opened a separate savings account in my own name. Not because I planned to leave, not yet, because somewhere deep down, my instincts were beginning to prepare for survival before my heart caught up. At work, I thrived. Compliance suited me perfectly. Patterns, records, financial inconsistencies. The truth almost always leaves paperwork behind eventually. I built professional relationships outside the Kesler family name intentionally, networked carefully, updated certifications, maxed out my retirement account. My mother noticed immediately. You're building an exit door, Myra Novak observed calmly over dinner one Sunday. I froze slightly. I'm not planning to leave. Myra sipped coffee slowly. Women start preparing emotionally long before they admit they are unhappy. God. Sometimes talking to my mother felt like being cross-examined gently by someone who already knew the verdict. Then came the group chat. Funny how entire marriages can crack open because of one accidental phone notification. Grant's phone buzzed during dinner one night, 3 quick vibrations. He flipped the screen downward too fast, but not fast enough. I caught the group name before it disappeared. Real Keslers. Something cold moved through my stomach instantly. Later that night, after Grant fell asleep beside me, I picked up his phone quietly from the nightstand. Passcode: 615. Harold Kesler's birthday. I opened the messages. And honestly, part of me wishes I hadn't, because once you see how people speak about you privately, you can never unknow it. Paige had uploaded a picture of me from brunch earlier that week. I wore jeans and a cream sweater. The caption read, "Marshall's clearance rack energy." 3 laughing emojis underneath. One from Paige, one from Judith, and one from Grant. My husband, I kept scrolling. Judith mocking my mother's accent. Paige criticizing my clothes, jokes about my poor girl manners. Grant rarely typed much, mostly emojis, thumbs up reactions, laughing faces, but honestly, passive cruelty hurts differently, because silence beside abuse still counts as participation. 47 screenshots. I saved every single one into the insurance folder. Then I found the message that changed everything. Judith. She will never truly belong here, Grant responded. I know. 2 words, that was all. But God, those 2 words hurt more than every insult combined. I sat in the bathroom afterward staring at myself in the mirror while Grant slept peacefully down the hall. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. That scared me because I realized something important. I wasn't shocked anymore. Deep down, some part of me had already known exactly who they were. The next morning, Grant kissed my forehead before work like nothing happened. Love you, he smiled. And for the first time since meeting him, I almost didn't say it back. Year 3 of my marriage began with the Mother's Day Gala. Judith Kesler's favorite event? Of course it was. 600 guests, black tie dress code, $200 plates, politicians, hospital executives, local news reporters, business owners competing publicly over donation amounts. The gala raised money for the children's wing at Mercy General Hospital. At least that's what everyone believed. Judith had chaired the event for 14 years straight. Her face appeared on every invitation, every program, every banner near the ballroom entrance. She moved through those events like royalty touring her kingdom, and everyone let her. Paige Kesler handled event coordination, meaning she spent 3 months acting like an exhausted celebrity while bullying hotel staff and screaming about flower arrangements. I was assigned volunteer duties, not because help was needed. Because Judith preferred me visible but unimportant, greeting guests, stuffing envelopes, printing name tags, tasks designed to keep me useful while reminding me where I ranked socially. And honestly, I accepted every assignment happily. Because the more invisible people think you are, the less carefully they hide things around you. 3 weeks before the gala, I was inside Judith's home office retrieving printed seating charts when I noticed an open financial folder across her desk. Normally, I would have ignored it, but numbers are hard for me not to notice. Donations received, $340,000. Event expenditures, $295,000. I scanned the vendor list automatically. Florals, audio-visual, catering, decor, standard categories, except something felt strange immediately. The expenses looked inflated, not dramatically. Just enough to make my compliance instincts twitch. That same night at the country club, I passed the LED donor board in the lobby. Large glowing numbers rotating beside donor names. Total displayed. $280,000 raised. I stopped walking instantly because I remembered the exact figure from Judith's office. $340,000 received, not $280,000, $60,000 missing publicly. In my profession, discrepancies like that have a name. Fraud. I didn't say the word yet though, not even in my own head. Instead, I drove 2 hours to Akron the following Saturday morning. My mother opened the door wearing reading glasses and holding a coffee mug. Myra Novak, Judith always called her, like she was announcing a foreign exchange student instead of a retired judge. Mom took one look at my face and immediately said, "Tell me everything." So I did. Thanksgiving, the group chat, the jokes, the house, the donor numbers, the feeling growing in my chest that something rotten sat underneath the entire Kesler family structure. Myra listened silently while morning rain tapped against the kitchen windows. No interruptions, no dramatic reactions, just careful listening. When I finally finished speaking, she poured herself another cup of coffee, then asked one question. "Do you have documentation?" I nodded slowly. "Screenshots, dates, notes, everything." Myra smiled faintly. Good, that single word made me sit straighter instantly, because my mother never praised emotion. She respected preparation. "What do you want, Myra?" God, that question nearly broke me because I realized then I already knew the answer. "I want to leave," I whispered. The kitchen went very quiet after that, then I added softly. "But I want to leave standing up." Myra stared at me for several seconds, not emotional, not surprised, proud. "You will," she said calmly, then she leaned back in her chair slightly. "But not yet." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Myra stirred cream into her coffee slowly. "People like Judith Kesler survive because they perform kindness publicly." Another pause. "You need witnesses." That sentence settled into my chest heavily. And suddenly I understood exactly what my mother meant. Private cruelty survives through secrecy. Public cruelty creates consequences. I drove home with the windows cracked, letting cold May air fill the car. For For the first time in months, I felt calm, not hopeful. Certain, the gala was 2 weeks away, and somewhere deep down, I think I already knew something terrible was coming. The next few days became strangely theatrical. Judith obsessed over every detail: flower arrangements, lighting, wine pairings, seating hierarchy, especially seating hierarchy. When the finalized chart arrived in my email, I opened the attachment and immediately found my name. Table 47, back corner of the ballroom near the service entrance, half hidden behind a decorative pillar. Grant sat at table 1 beside Judith and Paige. Family table, center stage. I called Grant immediately. "Why am I sitting at table 47? Long silence. Then a sigh. "It's just logistics, Myra." No, it wasn't. Grant knew it. I knew it. Everyone would know it. Judith wasn't just excluding me privately anymore. She was staging the humiliation carefully, and my husband was helping her do it. The night of the gala smelled like white roses and expensive perfume. Valet attendants moved luxury cars beneath glowing hotel lights while photographers snapped pictures near the entrance banners. Kesler Foundation Annual Mother's Day Gala. Judith's name sat larger than the hospital logo itself. Of course it did. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors while servers carried trays of champagne through crowds worth more money than most neighborhoods. Grant adjusted his tuxedo beside me near the entrance mirror. "You look nice," he said distractedly while checking his watch. "Nice, not beautiful, not stunning, just nice, like complimenting furniture." I wore a dark emerald gown my mother helped me pick out in Cleveland 2 weeks earlier. Simple, elegant, no designer label, but the dress fit perfectly. And for the first time in months, I dressed for myself instead of Judith's approval. Paige spotted me first. Her smile froze slightly. Interesting. Then Judith approached slowly with cameras practically following behind her. Diamond earrings, silver gown, perfect posture. Everything about Judith Kesler looked manufactured for admiration. She kissed Grant's cheek, ignored me entirely, then turned toward a local news reporter. "Family is everything," she announced warmly into the microphone. God. If hypocrisy made sound, it would have sounded exactly like that sentence. The ballroom filled quickly. Doctors, judges, real estate developers, politicians pretending to care about pediatric health care because cameras existed nearby. And everywhere, people smiled at Judith Kesler like she was charitable royalty. I moved quietly through the room, greeting guests, checking donor packets, helping volunteers with seating issues. Invisible work. Women like me always perform invisible work around powerful families. At 7:40 p.m., while organizing auction sheets near the registration table, I overheard something strange. 2 hotel accounting employees speaking quietly beside the service hallway. "Invoice doesn't match the transfer amount." "I'm not touching that account, it's Kesler." "Still feels wrong." I slowed slightly without looking toward them. Then one of the women noticed me nearby and immediately stopped talking. That alone told me enough. The ballroom lights dimmed shortly afterward. Music swelled softly through the speakers. Judith stepped onto the stage smiling while applause exploded around the room. Perfect posture, perfect voice, perfect performance. "Tonight," she announced warmly, "we celebrate compassion, generosity, and the sacred bond between mothers and children." I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I opened my phone beneath the tablecloth discreetly and started recording. Judith delivered her speech flawlessly. Stories about sick children, community sacrifice, love, family. The audience adored her. Of course they did. People worship appearances more easily than truth. Then came the donor presentation. Large digital screens lit up around the ballroom displaying fundraising totals besides sponsor names. Final amount raised: $417,000. My stomach tightened immediately, because earlier that afternoon, while helping volunteer staff organize paperwork, I accidentally saw updated accounting records in Paige's office. Total actual deposits, $502,000. $85,000 missing now, not 60, 85. And suddenly, I understood exactly why my mother told me to wait for witnesses. Because fraud hidden privately becomes undeniable publicly once numbers stop matching in front of 600 people. Then Judith made her mistake. "The Kesler Foundation has never taken a single dollar in administrative profit," she announced proudly into the microphone. Lie, direct lie, and I had proof sitting inside my purse. Bank copies, vendor discrepancies, duplicate invoices. My compliance brain had spent 2 weeks quietly connecting everything. Fake vendor inflation, shell consulting fees. Transfers routed through Page's event company. Small percentages skimmed carefully across multiple transactions. Not sloppy fraud, practiced fraud. Grant returned from the bar and slid into the chair beside me. "You disappeared earlier," he muttered. "I was working." He loosened his bow tie slightly. "You could try looking happier tonight." There it was again. The constant expectation that women should decorate environments emotionally no matter how badly they're treated inside them. I looked toward table 1 where Judith laughed loudly beside city council members. "Does your mother even hear herself when she talks about kindness?" Grant's expression hardened immediately. "Don't start." Funny phrase, "don't start." As if acknowledging cruelty somehow creates it. The auction portion began shortly afterward. Vacation packages, jewelry, wine tastings. People raising paddles for social status disguised as charity. At 9:12 p.m., Paige approached our table holding a champagne glass. Already slightly drunk, dangerous combination. She leaned down beside me, smiling sweetly enough for nearby guests to overhear clearly. "Judith wants family on stage after the final presentation." I blinked. "Family?" Paige smiled wider. "You know, actual family." Then she walked away, laughing softly into her champagne. Grant didn't react, didn't defend me. Didn't even look embarrassed anymore. That's when something inside me finally went completely still emotionally. No sadness, no anger, just clarity, and honestly, clarity is far more dangerous than heartbreak. 10 minutes later, Judith stood center stage again, preparing to close the evening beside giant screens displaying donation totals. "Before we finish tonight," she announced warmly, "I want to thank my family for supporting this mission year after year." Applause filled the ballroom. Then Judith smiled directly toward me, cold, calculated, public. "Grant," she said into the microphone, "why don't you come stand beside your real family?" 600 people turned toward my table simultaneously. And suddenly everything changed. You could feel the ballroom holding its breath. 600 people, crystal chandeliers glowing overhead, silverware frozen halfway to mouths, and every single person looking directly at me. Judith Kesler stood center stage, smiling softly beside the podium like she'd just made an innocent joke. Grant slowly stood beside our table, my husband, my actual husband. And for one horrifying second, I thought he might finally defend me. Instead, he adjusted his tuxedo jacket awkwardly and walked toward the stage alone. God, that hurt more than anything Judith ever said. Because cruelty from enemies wounds you differently than betrayal from someone who promised to protect you. Whispers spread instantly across nearby tables. Did she really say that? Oh my God, how embarrassing. Paige laughed openly beside the stage, holding a champagne flute. Judith placed one hand dramatically over her chest. "You know how mothers are," she joked lightly into the microphone. "Protective of family traditions." People laughed, not everyone, but enough. Enough to make humiliation feel physical. I sat perfectly still near the back corner table while heat crawled slowly into my face. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. This wasn't spontaneous. Judith planned this carefully. The seating arrangement, the comments. The isolation, every tiny humiliation building toward one public performance. Grant stood beside Judith, now staring anywhere except toward me. Coward, that's the word I finally allowed myself to think. Not confused. Not manipulated, coward. Judith smiled sweetly toward the crowd again. "And of course," she continued smoothly, "we all appreciate people who marry into families and try their best to adapt." Laughter again. Small, nervous, cruel. I heard someone near table 12 whisper, "She means the wife." No kidding. My hands rested calmly in my lap, steady, which honestly scared me because I realized something important. I wasn't emotionally overwhelmed anymore. I was observing, like my brain had already moved into survival mode automatically. Then Judith made the final mistake. She looked directly at me across the ballroom and smiled. "Some women," she said lightly into the microphone, "mistake access for belonging." God, even now that sentence makes my stomach turn, and that's when I stood up. Not dramatically, quietly. The ballroom shifted instantly. People always notice calm women more than emotional ones. I picked up my clutch slowly from the table, walked between rows of staring guests, and headed toward the ballroom exit without saying a word. Behind me, Judith kept speaking into the microphone, still performing, still pretending. Then Grant called my name sharply. Myra! I stopped walking. Half the ballroom turned further in their chairs, trying to watch both of us at once. Grant hurried after me, visibly irritated now. Don't do this. Interesting phrase. As if leaving humiliation quietly somehow created the problem. I turned toward him slowly beside the ballroom doors. Do what? You're embarrassing everyone. There it was. Not "Are you okay?" Not "My mother crossed a line," just concern for appearances. My chest went cold instantly. I stared at him carefully. Your mother publicly humiliated me. Grant rubbed his forehead hard. She was joking. No, that's the thing about cruel people. Everyone suddenly calls it humor once witnesses react badly. I laughed softly without humor. You sat on that stage while she treated me like garbage. Grant glanced nervously back toward the ballroom where people openly watched us now. Can you not make a scene? And somehow that sentence shattered the final emotional thread holding our marriage together. Because men like Grant always confuse silence with maturity. No scene, no discomfort, no accountability. Just endure it quietly so everyone else can keep eating dessert comfortably. I looked at him calmly. You know your mother hates me? Grant's jaw tightened immediately. She doesn't hate you. She told 600 people I'm not family. She didn't mean it like that. God. The desperation in his voice suddenly sounded pathetic instead of convincing. Because deep down, he knew exactly what she meant. And so did everyone else in that ballroom. Then I said the sentence that changed everything. I know about the foundation money. Grant froze instantly. Not confusion, fear, real fear. And suddenly I knew he already knew too. The color drained slowly from his face. What are you talking about? Bad lie, too fast, too rehearsed. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. 502,000 collected, 417 reported publicly. Grant stared at me silently, and in that exact moment, Judith appeared behind him. Still holding the microphone, still smiling, but her eyes terrified. What did you just say? She asked quietly. The ballroom had gone almost completely silent now. Because rich people hear scandal the way sharks smell blood underwater. I looked directly at Judith Kesler for the first time all night without fear, then calmly answered, I said your numbers don't match. And that's when Grant slapped me. The sound cracked across the ballroom like a gunshot. For one full second, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Grant's hand remained frozen in the air beside my face while shock rolled visibly through 600 people at once. Then came the gasps, sharp whispers. A champagne glass shattered somewhere near table 9, and Judith actually stepped backward, not horrified, panicked. Because suddenly this wasn't social humiliation anymore. This was public violence, against a woman standing directly beneath ballroom cameras. Blood touched the corner of my mouth slowly, warm, metallic. I looked at Grant carefully, and honestly, he looked more scared than I did. Because deep down, he knew exactly what he just destroyed. Not our marriage, his image. The ballroom doors burst open behind me suddenly. Hotel security, 2 men in black suits moving quickly toward us after hearing the commotion through hallway monitors. Grant lowered his hand immediately. Myra's no, too late for my name now. I stepped back calmly while whispers spread through the room like electricity. Oh my God, he hit her. Did you see that? Phones appeared instantly. People recording, people pretending not to record. Judith grabbed Grant's arm sharply. Stop talking, she hissed under her breath. Interesting. Not are you insane, not what did you do, just damage control, always damage control. One of the security guards approached carefully. Ma'am, are you all right? I touched the blood beside my lip gently, then nodded once. Yes. The guard looked unconvinced. Good, the ballroom had completely collapsed into chaos now. Donors whispering aggressively, reporters near the stage openly texting. Paige standing frozen beside the podium looking like she might faint. And somewhere across the room, I spotted local Channel 8 anchor Rebecca Nolan staring directly at us. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Because Myra Novak once taught me something important. Cruel people survive privately, consequences survive publicly. Grant tried stepping toward me again. Myra, listen, I held up one hand calmly. And for the first time in 3 years, he actually stopped talking. because something about my face finally frightened him. Not anger, absence. The emotional attachment was simply gone. "You hit me," I said quietly, 6 simple words. But in that silent ballroom, they sounded devastating. Grant ran both hands through his hair desperately. "I didn't mean, you hit me." Again, steady, clear, no screaming required. Judith suddenly stepped between us, smiling tightly toward nearby guests. "I think emotions are running high tonight. God, even then, even after physical violence." She still treated reality like a public relations inconvenience. I looked directly at her. "Did you know about the missing foundation money too?" That sentence detonated harder than the slap somehow. Several people near the front tables turned instantly toward Judith, the reporters especially. Judith's face changed immediately, tiny shift, but enough, fear, real fear. "Excuse me," she said coldly. I opened my clutch slowly, pulled out folded accounting copies, vendor records, transfer summaries, and held them calmly in my hand. Page went white instantly. Interesting, very interesting, because innocent people don't react to paperwork like they've seen ghosts. "You inflated vendor invoices through Page Kesler events," I said clearly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Then rerouted the difference into private accounts." Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The ballroom felt electrically still. Grant stared at the documents in horror. "You went through our files, notice that not. Those accusations are false, just concern about access." Judith recovered first, of course. Women like Judith always do. She smiled coldly toward the crowd. "My daughter-in-law works in compliance and clearly misunderstands nonprofit accounting." Nice try. But too late, because once people smell financial scandal, they stop protecting reputations emotionally. A man near table 3 stood abruptly. "Board member, Mercy General Hospital. I think we need to review those records immediately." Another donor stood beside him, then another, and suddenly the room shifted entirely. That's the dangerous thing about wealthy social circles. Loyalty disappears instantly once money investigations appear. Judith realized it too. I watched the exact second control slipped from her face. Grant tried grabbing my arm then, hard enough to hurt. "Myra, stop." The security guard moved instantly between us. "Sir, step back." God, watching another man protect me faster than my own husband ever did nearly broke something inside me. Grant looked around wildly now, sweating. Cornered, finished, and then the ballroom doors opened again. Everyone turned. A woman stepped inside wearing a charcoal coat dusted lightly with rain. Silver hair pulled neatly back. Calm posture, sharp eyes, Myra Novak, my mother. The retired judge. And the second Judith Kesler saw her, she stopped smiling completely. My mother walked into the ballroom like she belonged there. Not flashy, not emotional, just calm. And somehow that terrified the Keslers more than screaming ever could. Rain shimmered across Myra Novak's charcoal coat while ballroom guests slowly moved aside without even realizing they were doing it. The room had changed now. This wasn't a gala anymore. It was a collapse. Grant stood near the stage pale and sweating while Judith tried desperately to regain control of the atmosphere. But control is fragile once witnesses stop cooperating. Myra reached me first. Her eyes moved briefly to the blood near my mouth. Nothing dramatic changed in her expression. That was the thing about my mother. She became calmer the more serious situations became. "You're hurt," she observed quietly. "I'm okay," Myra nodded once, then finally looked toward Grant Kesler. And God, I have never seen a grown man shrink so quickly under a single glance. Because Myra Novak spent 18 years as a family court judge. She built an entire career studying abusive men pretending to be respectable. Grant opened his mouth immediately. "It wasn't." Myra lifted one hand slightly. And somehow he stopped talking again. "I watched the livestream clip in the car," she said calmly. "Livestream, right. Someone had uploaded the slap already. Of course they had. This was 2026. Public humiliation travels faster than sound now." Judith stepped forward, quickly recovering her social smile again. "Myra, this is clearly a misunderstanding between husband and wife." God. That sentence alone made several nearby women visibly uncomfortable, because women recognize minimization instantly once they've survived enough life. Myra turned toward Judith slowly. "No," she said softly. "This is assault." Silence exploded again across the ballroom. Direct language terrifies wealthy people, especially when spoken calmly. Judith's jaw tightened immediately. You're being dramatic. Interesting. Because powerful women like Judith always accuse other women of drama the second consequences appear. Alina ignored her completely. Instead, she looked toward the hospital board members gathering near the stage. I assume someone here has already contacted legal counsel regarding the foundation discrepancies? Several people exchanged nervous glances instantly. Perfect. My mother understood institutions better than anyone I'd ever met. People panic emotionally, systems panic legally. Big difference. One board member cleared his throat awkwardly. We're reviewing documents currently. Alina nodded. As you should. Then she added the sentence that detonated the rest of the room. Because if nonprofit funds were diverted knowingly through fraudulent vendor inflation, multiple criminal statutes may apply. Paige actually dropped her champagne glass. It shattered beside the stage loudly. Everyone turned toward her immediately, and suddenly the Keslers no longer looked powerful. They looked exposed. Grant stepped toward me again carefully. Myra, please come home so we can talk privately. Privately, of course. Because abusive dynamics survive best behind closed doors, I stared at him quietly. You hit me in front of 600 people. Grant's face twisted desperately. I lost my temper. No, you revealed your character. Different thing entirely. The security guards remained nearby, now openly watching him. Good. Alina reached into her purse calmly and handed me a folded business card. Family attorney, already prepared. Because my mother anticipated disasters the way other people anticipate weather. Tears are data, she whispered softly in Romanian. Then, now we make the plan. God, I almost broke down right there hearing that sentence again. Not because I felt weak, because suddenly I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, the ballroom had completely divided into camps, some guests quietly leaving, some openly gossiping, some pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. And everywhere, phones, recording, uploading, texting. The Kesler image was bleeding out in real time. Then came the final twist. Rebecca Nolan from Channel 8 approached, holding her phone carefully. Mrs. Kesler, she asked Judith directly, would you like to comment on allegations involving foundation funds? Judith froze, not for long, but long enough. And experienced reporters notice hesitation instantly. My family is dealing with a personal matter tonight, Judith answered tightly. Rebecca didn't blink. And the accounting discrepancies? No answer. That silence alone probably cost Judith half her social standing immediately. Grant tried one last time. Myra, I looked at him carefully. 3 years together, 3 years of excuses, minimizing, humiliation, cowardice. And somehow I suddenly felt nothing. No hatred, no love, just exhaustion. You laughed at their messages about me, I said quietly. Grant blinked. What? The group chat, real Keslers? Color drained from his face instantly. Good. Let him wonder how much I knew. I stepped closer, lowering my voice enough that only he could hear the final sentence. I stopped loving you the night you agreed with your mother. Then I walked away, not running, not crying. Just walking calmly beside Alina toward the ballroom exit while whispers crashed behind us like waves. Outside, cold rain hit my skin softly beneath hotel lights. News vans already pulled into the circular driveway, that fast. Jesus. Alina opened the passenger door for me quietly. Before getting inside, I looked back once toward the glowing ballroom windows high above us. Tiny figures moved chaotically inside, the Keslers scrambling to save appearances. But appearances were already dead. And somewhere deep down, I think Judith Kesler finally understood something terrifying. She didn't lose control because I fought back emotionally. She lost because I stayed calm long enough to gather proof. By sunrise, the video had over 2 million views, not the fraud allegations. The slap. 32 seconds filmed from table 14 showing Grant Kesler striking me beside the ballroom doors while 600 guests watched in silence. The internet named it the Gala slap. God. People turned trauma into hashtags frighteningly fast. I woke up in my mother's guest room to 47 missed calls and over 300 unread messages. Unknown numbers, reporters, coworkers, former classmates, even people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly pretending concern. And buried underneath all of it, one text from Grant. Please let me explain. Interesting, not I'm sorry, explain. Because men like Grant always believe there's still a version of the story where they remain misunderstood instead of guilty. Downstairs, Myra Novak sat at the kitchen table reading printed legal documents while classical music played softly through the house. Like always, calm, structured, prepared, she slid a mug of coffee toward me without looking up. Eat first, decisions second. God, I love that woman. The next 72 hours destroyed the Kesler family publicly. Audit requests hit the foundation immediately. Mercy General suspended all financial activity pending investigation. 2 vendors admitted privately inflating invoices under Paige Kesler's direction. 1 accountant turned over emails. And suddenly, the polished charity empire Judith Kesler built over 14 years started collapsing piece by piece. Turns out greed leaves paper trails no matter how elegant people think they are. Grant resigned from Kesler Building Supply by Tuesday afternoon. Paige deleted all social media. Judith attempted one disastrous public statement claiming the family was facing targeted harassment. That lasted 4 hours before another donor leaked internal accounting screenshots online. Then came the divorce meeting. Funny, 3 years of marriage reduced to conference rooms and paperwork. Grant arrived looking exhausted, wrinkled suit, red eyes, shaking hands. He sat across from me beside his attorney while Myra remained perfectly still near the window reviewing notes. No small talk, no emotional reunion, just consequences finally arriving on schedule. Grant tried first. Myra, I never wanted this. I stared at him calmly. The slap, the investigation, the media, everything. Interesting, still centering himself emotionally even now, I leaned back slightly. You should have stopped your mother years ago. Grant rubbed both hands across his face hard. You don't understand what she's like. No, I understood perfectly. The real question was why he accepted it. Then Grant whispered something that honestly shocked me. She controlled everything after Dad died. Myra finally looked up from her papers. Grant swallowed hard. The trust funds, the business, the money. He laughed bitterly. Even us. There it was. The truth hiding underneath the entire Kesler family structure. Fear. Judith didn't build loyalty, she built dependency. Paige depended financially. Grant depended emotionally. Everyone around Judith learned survival through obedience. That didn't excuse him, but suddenly I understood him differently. Weak people raised by controlling parents often confuse submission with peace. Grant stared at me across the conference table. I did love you, God. That sentence hurt in the strangest way, because maybe part of him actually believed it. But love without protection eventually becomes meaningless. I answered honestly, I know. And somehow that destroyed him more than anger would have. The settlement finalized 2 weeks later. No dramatic courtroom battle, no screaming, no revenge speech, just signatures, assets divided, house sold, marriage over. Meanwhile, investigators officially confirmed financial misconduct inside the Kesler Foundation. Over $300,000 misappropriated across 8 years. Not just one gala, multiple events, multiple accounts. Judith Kesler's face disappeared from hospital donor walls almost overnight. Funny how quickly communities erase people once status becomes inconvenient. Then one evening in late June, Myra and I sat on her back porch watching summer rain drift across the garden. Quiet, peaceful, my phone buzzed again, another interview request, another podcast invitation, another reporter asking how it felt to become the woman from the Gala video. I silenced it. Myra sipped tea slowly beside me. You know what scares people most about women like Judith? She asked. I looked over. Myra smiled faintly. They think humiliation creates obedience. Rain tapped softly against the porch roof overhead. Then she added, but sometimes humiliation creates evidence. God, that sentence settled into my chest permanently. A month later, I accepted a new position in Chicago leading compliance investigations for a healthcare network. Better salary, better city, better life. And on my final night in Ohio, I drove once past the country club where everything collapsed. The ballroom lights glowed warmly through tall windows. Another gala, another performance. Another room full of powerful people pretending appearances matter more than truth. But not me anymore. I kept driving. Before you go, subscribe and comment. What's the moment you realized someone's perfect family was hiding something dark underneath? And remember, the most dangerous women are usually the quiet ones gathering proof while everyone else underestimates them.